Hello, and welcome to the Dissident Mama podcast. Today, my guest is Father Deacon Ananias Sorum. Sorum has a PhD and is the founder of Patristic Faith. Father is an Orthodox apologist and teaches philosophy at Fullerton College and Carroll College. He has a BA in liberal arts from Thomas Aquinas College, together with an MA honors and PhD in philosophy, epistemology, philosophy of science, and philosophy of mind from University College Dublin. His current academic work focuses on philosophical theology, epistemology, and the philosophy of science. Father is the author of several articles and peer-reviewed papers, which I will put in the show notes page. He also has a YouTube channel through Patristic Faith, where he provides content on theology, apologetics, logic, and philosophy. Welcome to the Dissident Mama podcast. This has been quite a we've been trying to get this set for a while, but it's finally happening, so I'm very excited. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. And yeah, we finally get this opportunity to. So God bless you for having me on. And yeah, looking forward to our talk.
One of the reasons we want to talk, we have a lot in common. We are both Orthodox Christians. We are both content creators, but we both are conference planners.
That's right.
So I think we're going to start with that. I recently pulled it out of a hat, the Ludwell Orthodox Fellowship Conference, which took place on September 16th. But you have been doing the Montanica Conference for what, 3 years?
3 years. Yeah, I need to give you an award since you now are, you can officially put that on your resume, right? Conference creator and organizer. And here we got this little award here that you can put. Isn't that cool?
Thank you. That is cool. I'll take it.
You can put it like a pin right there, but like I'm an Orthodox conference organizer.
I never
that would
thought
be cool if I could create that.
Yes,
I heard it was a wonderful success. So congratulations. Let me be the first to say that.
Thank you. It was a success. I think a lot of people don't think I deserve an award. We can get to some of that later. But tell me about Montanica, and am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yes. So, or you could say Montanica.
Okay.
The name kind of evolved. A lot of stuff evolves in a good way. I can tell you first how it started off. I had been thinking maybe 4 years ago about creating a website. There would just be kind of a hub for orthodoxy that was an aggregate site that could bring different content creators together. Because what I started to notice is, like yourself and others, there were a lot of good Orthodox content providers and creators that would get a following and people would subscribe to them, but then they wouldn't know about perhaps somebody else. And so you had these kind of niches and different kind of groups. And yet I was friends with all of these content providers. And I was just thinking, power in numbers. Wouldn't it be great if we just had an aggregate site where I just pulled together some of them and it would basically outsource to their work, their pages, while putting some content up on a web page. And we talked about this and we're trying to come up with a name. And I reached out to a couple of the content creators that were interested in this. And I asked them if they just wanted to come up one summer and hang out in Helena, Montana, and we could just brainstorm together. And so as soon as I said that, it got out of hand. It got out of my hands. It became something in a good sense.
Yeah.
Because I was, always kind of a modest proposal. Let's start off very modest. Let's just let's just hang out. We're friends and we can brainstorm. And of course, contemporaries, oh, this is great. We'll make it into a conference. We'll sell books. We'll do this. And they're far more ambitious than myself. And that just because I would be the organizer and all this responsibility would fall on me. I was like, that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
want to. I don't want to do that. Um, it's very rare that I lose arguments. I lost that argument, and they won. And so the first year, 3 years ago, we held it at my campus where I work at in person, Carroll College, and we had about 70 people, and it was an amazing success. You know, it started off modest. I think we only provided one meal. We had coffee, and it was a very different crew. It was is my web manager said it was like Jay Dyer's live chat um, rolled up in a bus and all spilled out on. I was like, that's really if you want to use the term ortho bro, which has become a pejorative, which is unfortunate because little people know, most people don't know. I created that term in a positive sense many years ago back in California when I was doing a lot of work with the Young Adult League and parishes and stuff like that with the youth. And it just again slipped out of my hands and became something else. And now it's a bad word. That
Let's take it back.
Let's take it back. Amen.
Yes.
And so I learned a lot from that conference, and it matured. And then so we moved it the second year to where I serve, Holy Trinity Serbian Orthodox Church in Butte, which is about an hour away from the capital where I live here in Helena. And it was it was even better. But it was far more complicated. A lot more stuff provided. We had Metropolitan Jonah, who you also had, Abbot Trifon, David Patrick Harry. We had Michael Witkoff, and it was a tremendous success. And at the same time, a learning experience. It's, you know, there's so many, you probably know this, there's so many intricate pieces that have to be kind of set up and all play out that it was concerned that it would, I wouldn't pull it off. And there's each year there's kind of a grace of God that covers the conference, and what, you know, is the Gospel of Matthew states what's impossible for men is possible with God. And that's really become true with the Montanica conference. So it was originally Orthodox Montanica. And then the second year, you know, we've had haters from the beginning.
Shocking.
And so, but the second year, a lot of these haters really came out, and I had people threatening me with a lawsuit that there was a clothing company in Montana, an apparel company, and some of the haters contacted them and said these people, these religious people are trying to like steal and make money. So I got an email basically threatening me with a lawsuit that this is a copy mark and trademarked name. Interesting enough, most people don't know much about law, and American people are very litigious for some reason. I'll sue you.
Right.
So I just only took a little bit, like a few minutes of research. I did look up, there was a copyright on it, but no trademark.
Spelled the same way and everything?
What's that?
Was it spelled the same way?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
It was, it had an apostrophe at the end of it. And it wasn't Orthodox Montanica, it was Montanica apostrophe.
Okay. And there was no C. I mean, there was a C instead of a K, maybe?
There was a C. I didn't add the K. That's where I'm you know, building up the story.
Okay, sorry.
To this point. So the guy was like, I'll sue you and you'll lose. Don't even try it, kind of thing. And I'm like, I know I'll win, because it took just, like I said, a few minutes to even look up law of trademark and copyright law. I could actually copyright. I mean, I could actually use the word Nike, and I can't get sued under copyright or trademark law. Now, if I was selling a similar product, and using the logo. But if I had Nike hamburgers,
Interesting.
Nike church event, um, I couldn't be actually sued for that. So I knew that I could fight this person, but I decided, you know what, I'll just give it to him. I wrote a letter. I said, hey, I apologize. I can change it. Whatever you want. You know what I mean? Just try to smooth things over. And just to kind of avoid any problems in litigation, even though I'd win that lawsuit, I baptized the name Orthodox. So Nika is conqueror, champion. And so I just changed it to Orthodox Montana Nika. And that became the official title, and we followed through on the third, which was even more successful. So that's a little story about the kind of evolution of the name. And like I said, each conference has become more and more mature. I've learned more stuff's actually provided. Speakers keep getting better and better. And this last year we had His Grace Bishop Maxime, who it's his actual diocese and parish, come out from California as the keynote speaker. And he was so impressed that he officially took that on under his Amaforon, and it's officially his. Like, I'm just the organizer. So it's amazing to see that evolution. It used to be under me. I used to be doing everything. And now it's reached a level of kind of professionalism that it's Bishop Maxime's conference. I'm the worker. I just put together, and I'm happy to be that, especially as a deacon, to put me into work. So for the kingdom of God.
Yeah, so the name evolution is wonderful. So that person actually did you a favor because it is
Yeah.
so catchy, and you can brand that really easily too. Was this person who was going after you for the name, were they Orthodox?
No, and it's actually a sad story. The guy's a retired vet. He's like dying of cancer, so Lord have mercy, pray. He didn't know. I have a parishioner that works with him that actually contacted him, and the guy basically apologized, and he said, I was contacted by somebody else and I was lied to. I didn't know that you were a nonprofit that was an organization. This person says that you were stealing my company and selling products. And
Wow.
so that's really sad. So the guy that actually wrote me, totally understandable. Somebody lied to him, a hater. So the guy himself ends up being a good guy. He's not a hater. I've had this for the last 3 years. People, trying to get me fired, trying to get me in trouble ecclesially. You're right, like they're liars. And God bless them. They do me a big favor because I ain't gonna get to, I'm not gonna get into the kingdom through, my piety and ascesis. I struggle, and so I think God sometimes sees that and goes, you know what? I'll help this deacon out by giving him some tribulations and hate,
Yeah,
persecution.
exactly.
So I just try to kind of see the positive of that. That I'm like, you guys are really helping me.
Yes.
And it helps me develop patience and compassion, just like the story I was saying too. It'd been easy to hate this guy and be like, I'll see you in court. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So these are great. Our God's a good God who loves mankind. He gives these wonderful opportunities that somebody could see is terrible. Why would God let this happen to me? And I just try to use these as, what is God trying to teach me? And how can I get better and stronger, and get closer to the kingdom through these things?
Yeah, I often joke that I have sin issues like everybody, but sins of omission is not one of them.
Yeah.
I'm a doer, so God gives me that talent to be able to use to glorify Him and glorify the kingdom, and to spread orthodoxy, which is the goal of the Ludwell Orthodox Fellowship. It is it's a missions organization, and that's the funny thing, that when we get hate, I think it's good advertisement for us, because people who already like have a clue as to the haters, as you so say. They already have a clue, when we're being attacked by them, it's good for us. Oh, I've never heard of this fellowship. If they're hated by X, Y, and Z, they must be pretty good, that kind of thing. So tell me about some of the hate this year. What exactly was going on? Your biggest struggle as far as maybe social media presence, or I don't know, people on the higher ups contacting you about something. I mean, what was your biggest struggle, and then how did you get through it?
So we had a gentleman that was in one of our servers, and I learned a big lesson too. A lot of, like I said, all this stuff is great lessons, and I actually talked about this at the men's retreat too. My talk was what was it? Hyperrigidity, orthospurgism, and I'm trying to remember the. Oh, I'll pull it up. It's really funny. It's called the Unholy Trinity, like traps for traps for spiritual progress. And let's see, men's retreat talk here. Hyperdoxy, orthospurgism, and hyperrigidity, traps and pitfalls for our spiritual growth, the Unholy Trinity.
Nice.
And just working with the youth and being on social media and seeing a lot of these things, especially as clergy, I'm thinking pastorally a lot through. So I know I do apologetics, but I have different ministries and different duties. And when in Rome, I know to do as the Romans do. And so I'm just kind of observing and watching unhealthy kind of patterns and stuff like that. And then also learning from my lack of oversight and particular mistakes that I might made, which was this episode that we had somebody that basically said they were in a grad program in Orthodoxy, didn't tell me that they'd only been Orthodox for a year. Because I would have been like, well, they're a neophyte, and you shouldn't be dealing with these deep theological issues, or apologetics. But the gentleman was, had a lot of zeal, and I thought, heck, I could put him to work, and seemed like a good guy, and I even had him. There's times where we need help at Patristic Faith. Just any Orthodox Christian can contribute an article. We obviously have main contributors, but anybody can be a guest contributor. We just review it and make sure that the clergy advisory board approves of it. But sometimes, because of people's schedules, it's really difficult, and we're at a time period where I needed help just reading. I'm like, well, here's somebody that's in grad school or seminary that could give an extra eyes on, and just kind of let me know, hey, this article seems good to me, or I noticed some problems. So I put this gentleman to work or reading. I even published one of his articles. It seemed to be a decent article. And then in one of our servers, I started noticing some unhealthy kind of spiritual and mental issues of and this is with like hyper rigidity, obsessive compulsive. I call it orthospurgism because whether or not the individual actually has Asperger's or not, they mimic certain things to the detriment of themselves and others, especially spiritually. And so there was this hyper focus on this issue about sacramentology, and was taking kind of a Latin Augustinian sacramentology that was not compatible with Orthodoxy. And the people on the server who were actually well educated enough, some of the moderators and administrators, calling this person out. Now, one of the big problems that we often deal with is that most people neither have the qualifications nor the experience of reading theology and philosophy. A lot of these people are new converts. And so if somebody comes in and kind of has displays kind of a confidence in a material, they can severely confuse and mislead inquirers, catechumens, and even Orthodox. And so for us running different servers, for us, in patristic faith, we have a duty to kind of keep an eye and look after the flock and call people out. And we had to call this gentleman out several times that this isn't Orthodox. He just wanted to debate this issue. And basically was told, stop talking about it on the Discord server. Like, you're confusing. And I told him, you can reach out to me. I wasn't going to argue theology with them. I was actually going to talk pastorally that, look, it's a trap of the devil. Like, you need to put this aside, because the devil's going to basically tell you, you know what, you're smart enough. Everybody else has got this wrong, but you can figure this out. I would have told him, put it aside and focus on something else. But he never reached out to me, and eventually got kicked from the server, and basically then started building up kind of resentment and hate, and came out and went exactly the way that we were worried about. He was led into ecumenism, and he started aligning with Fordham, Hyphen Girl, and all these things, and published a hit piece that was full of libel and lies that basically some of the people that I work with, that he basically, I was on the inside in patristic faith, and which is a lie. He wasn't. Like I said, my lack of oversight, I didn't realize that he was young, that he was only 1 year in Orthodoxy. If I knew that, I would have been like, no, you're not going to be. And so I learned, I need to do a better job of kind of doing background checks and kind of following up on people. And so I learned that, but that went all over the internet. It was, I think, published through, you probably know the article that I'm talking about. And what was so sad is, it painted like, this is a cult, and these, they were doxing me, and the gentleman wasn't particularly that negative towards me, but the whole thing was libelous and put us all into kind of one camp. And people started disseminating this without even contacting me. Hey, who is this guy? What happened?
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. I saw a bishop post that article. I've seen philosophy professors that I've been to conferences with post that art, and I'm like, you don't even bother calling me. Yeah. I had tons of priests and clergy contact me and be like, hey, what's going on? And I told them the story. And that was really unfortunate. And the reason why is there are certain people that aren't necessarily concerned with the truth. They have presuppositions and a narrative. And it's like confirmation bias. If they see that, why investigate? That's what I need to confirm my bias. And that became really kind of evident. And it's, kind of a revealing. I'm like, that's great. So another great news, what men intend for evil, God intends for good. I'm like, now I know who my enemies are. You're not my friend. You're not my brother.
Yes.
A brother would have contacted me like the other clergy and priests and be like, hey, what's this I hear about? You actually, without any investigation, spread a libelous, and now I know who you are. And so that was a really good thing too. And, thank God, part of the same group, and I'd say it's kind of a diverse group. These people kind of like can align together for a common purpose. But, they were telling people, don't go to Orthodox Montanica. It's white supremacist, racist cult formed by the deacon that wants to rebel from all the bishops. It's a radicalized ortho bro movement. And there's some people that were told not to come up here. Some of them were actually even guest speakers that said, you know what? I can do my own investigation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually have to participate in rumors and libel. I'll investigate for myself. And they came and saw, and they were just absolutely blown away. They're like, it's just the opposite.
Yeah.
It's everything. And that's exactly what Bishop Maxim said. It's everything you would want a community and parish to be. We had a huge, like the first Orthodox Montanica was like almost all men. And it just got better and better as far as the demographics and stuff like that. How many women and children we had. Mm-hmm. That they just saw that none of this stuff is a radicalized right-wing militia. And if you remember too, last year, Abbot Trifon on one of the tours, because Butte was the second largest town in America. People don't know that. Hollywood actors used to come here. The mining industry was booming. And there's a huge, long, really interesting history of like different ethnic groups. Our Serbian Orthodox Church was founded in that because it's 123 years old, because of the Serbians and the Russians and different people from the Orthodox homelands that were here working in Butte and the mines and stuff like that. So it's beautiful history. There's a whole prohibition thing and tunnels underground. Evel Knievel was from here. So we have a lot of kind of cool tours in Butte, speakeasies. And so Abbot Trifon with some of the guys from the conference was on this museum tour. And they were in a speakeasy. And the tour guide at the speakeasy little bar that was underground gave him a prop Tommy gun to take a photo, like a photo op, right? You just could see this happening. And unfortunately, somebody posted that, and within 15 minutes, it went everywhere across the United States, went to the East Coast, and Abbot Trifon was getting calls from the East Coast Diocese about, and then there was an article published as if it was almost pre-written the day before,
shocking,
hot off the press, that white supremacist militia with guns, and that was unfortunate. I had to do some kind of damage control, with that, and a lot of it's just you don't give it much attention. Thank God that smoothed over, and I just had to tell people, be on your best behavior. Like, you never know, you're representing Orthodoxy. That was a lack of oversight on that. If I was there, I would have been like, you probably shouldn't do that, right? I would have said that. I wasn't. So I made a policy this year, no unauthorized photos. Please be on your best behavior, not just at the conference, but at all times. You're Orthodox Christians, you represent Orthodoxy, and at all times. And so, sometimes people just need to know that. But that was from the second year building up with all the kind of haters, then the article that came out, and then just hearing these rumors about what people are saying about your community, right? Your friends and your loved ones and parishioners, and the priests up here. I mean, they were putting all the priests in too. They're all part of it, which is funny because they're always accusing like us of being conspiracy theories, right? But it's like, that's actually a conspiracy.
Yeah.
Like a dumb conspiracy theory. Like, so all the priests are in on it in Montana, right?
Yeah.
And furthermore, they give me way too much power. It's like, so I was able to turn everybody, all the priests, the bishops, oh, you got another bishop. That deacon, he's just so smart and we just can't get him right. It's like, come on, like, I'm flattered, but like, it's not true. Um, but after Bishop Maxime came up, um, and he endorsed that and he officially put it up on his diocese website, like a write up about it. I haven't heard anything. Like, it's very little kind of chatter, because you know what? It's not mine anymore.
Yeah.
And it's part of the reason too why I relinquished authority in patristic faith. It's just good order of the church that I'm just a deacon. You know, scripture says a wise man seeks multiple counsel, and that's exactly what I did. I assembled a clergy advisory board. When there's issues and problems that come up, things that need to be reviewed, they hold executive power in patristic faith. And so, although, like I said, just with the conference, I'm doing all the work, I was happy to give up the power and I pass it up and ask for the advice of those who are wiser and hold higher rankings than me. Like, you know, Father, what should I do? It's exactly what happened with Montanica. It's now Bishop Maxime's. So he can tell me how he wants it. Just put me to work. And so that's been kind of a layer of protection, because now you can't just go after me, the deacon. You have to go after a whole clergy advisory board. You have to go after a bishop now, and a bishop that's loved by everybody. And so I think that's why, for me, it's kind of calmed down. And you know, again, I learned all of this just through going through all the drama and hate. Is here, there's a challenge, there's a problem, and it needs a solution. And it just, you know, was kind of was good that it forced me into polish things up and make it more professional. I'm sure, like, you know, we'll make mistakes, but we'll learn from that and keep growing and maturing in that.
Yeah, I think the point you were making about the sense of clarity you see when people don't give you the benefit of the doubt, people immediately have this impulse to believe the gossip and the slander and the bad stories and the bad reporting and the bad writing and the made up words that people come up with and whatnot. And so to me, the story isn't whether Montanica is white supremacist or whether the Ludwig Orthodox Fellowship is neo-Confederate. It's that there are Orthodox who call themselves Orthodox and pretend to be edifying and literally don't give other Orthodox the benefit of the doubt. And I'm not talking about the haters. The haters are going to do what they want, right?
Yeah, that's not the actual concern. It's
yeah,
the kind of
it's
middle
the people.
of the road.
Yes, it's the people who believe them. That's the story. That's the sociological experiment. That's the phenomenon. We're not a phenomenon. We just want to spread orthodoxy to our neighbors. People have been doing that for 2,000 years. No big news story there. So that's the thing I'm trying to point out to people, because there was a journo who came to our get together, and I knew she was going to be there, and some of the founders didn't want her to come. They wanted to disinvite her, and I said, let's let her come. Let's let her write her hit piece. Let's let her overplay her hand. Let's let everybody share it and call us Nazis and all sorts of stuff, which has happened. It really didn't get that much traffic. I haven't said anything about it publicly. I will eventually critique the article just as a journalist, because it's extremely poorly written. You know, all the talking points about Putin and Trump, you know, as if she did some kind of you know, survey of people. I don't think the word Putin was mentioned at all. And another thing that they do too, like, and that's interesting because you have this clergy advisory board, and of course you're clergy. I'm just a schlub. I'm just a housewife. But our founders are 2 philosophers and a priest. And now the priest is Father John Whiteford. He happens to be a target of the haters too. So anytime there's a hit piece, they only talk about me, right? And my Dissident Mama stuff, which is, you know, radical. You know, 25 years ago, it would have just been normal speak, but now it's all considered radical. But they never mention Dr. Clark Carlton, who was a theologian also and a philosopher, and Dr. Donald Livingston, because they want us to be, we're so stupid, we're backwoods and all this kind of thing. So again, when people call us repugnant, they weren't even there. I mean, that's the sociological experiment. That's what I want to shine a light on. So it's fascinating when other Orthodox don't give you the benefit of the doubt, and especially people who know you. So how do we deal with that? Do we just deal with it and pray for them? I mean, which we're already doing, or is there some kind of light bulb that's going to go on there, or is it going to have to be stuff hits the fan even worse, and there's more winnowing and separating of the wheat and chaff, into where they're going to have to be like, wow, those people who are always liars are still lying, and maybe these people over here who are always getting thrown under the bus, maybe they're the good guys. I don't know. What do you think about that? Like, how do we combat that, if at all?
I was trying to find this prayer that I love praying. I think it's in one of the other prayer books.
While you're looking for it, I'll tell a quick story. A dean of a certain jurisdiction called Clark Carlton and asked him about this religious news stories that was written by that journo, Megan, and he was like, I heard you had Confederate flags with 3-bar crosses on them, because her story said that we had Southern state flags with, she emphasized Russian 3-bar crosses to push the whole we're Putin asset things, when it's just an Orthodox cross, right? Any Orthodox who's triggered by that should not be, but they were state flags. It was like the regular state flag of North Carolina, but with a 3-bar Orthodox cross. Yeah. Now, to me, having a Confederate flag with an Orthodox cross, there's nothing wrong with that either, but that's not what we had at the conference, right? Because that's more like a Dissident Mama thing, but the fellowship was something else. So instead of this dean, reading the story where it says Southern state flags, he decides to ask questions as if we are, I don't know, burning crosses, wearing white hoods, whatever. So that's just this great example. I'm like, I think that dean owes Dr. Carlton an apology, honestly. Yeah. So I don't think,
and that was a dean. Wow.
Yeah. These are the things we're talking about. How do we deal with that? Do we just pray harder?
Well, I pray there's it's in, I left it at the church, but I'll pick it up tomorrow night. The pre-communion prayers, there's a prayer that, like, prayers for one's enemy. I actually screenshot it because I went on my phone, but of course I can never find, I have so many photos I can't find when I want. But it's a beautiful prayer. And I think we should pray for our enemies. And then again, multiple counsel. We're always tempted to, at least I am, like, well, I'll answer them. Like, I always want to debate and fight, the good fight.
Yeah.
But there's a time and place. You got to be measured and not rash. You have to be courageous. That mean proportional, and the royal path's a hard one to follow. And so I get help from those who are much more experienced and wiser. And I have a clergy advisor. What should we do? As far as should we respond? Almost always, there's very few things that elicit a response, let alone an immediate response.
Yeah.
And so at the time when you hear these things, you're like, this seems like such a big deal, but this is the devil getting in your head.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do? What if people believe? There's a particular, a battalion of demons that are called the what if demons. What if this happens? What are you going to do? They're all the what ifs. And it gets you to fall into fear. And just like Peter, you look away from Christ and then you sink, right? That's why Christ's the most repeated, phrase in scripture is fear not. Second one's probably peace be with you, right? Like, and so that's kind of been our tactic is that all this stuff, all I need to do is just keep doing what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Like, just do the ministry, do the good work. And I have counsel. I have bishops backing me, right? That's blessed me and have taken under their like, so I just don't think it's going to go anywhere. And if it does, it's something bad, then I learn from it. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So I just try not to invest too much worry or time in that. But sometimes there might be a response to, that Father Andrew had written a recent article about um, the conference, and it was in light of, because all these haters, and there's people that are even clergy that I said are part of this, and shame on them.
Amen.
That you are going against your own brothers and dividing the community. The people up here have gone through heck. And to see that there's actually clergy that are actually still complicit and dividing the community and hurting people who've already been hurt up here is an absolute shame. And Lord have mercy on them. And I pray that they repent. And, part of that article was to respond to some of them that, like, you're believing in lies, you're hurting people. God's grace is here with his people, and there's good things, and just come and see. And I've always had this too. If you don't like something that we clergy and patristic faith are doing, why don't you come on and help us, rather
Yeah.
than try to destroy us? I mean, these people want to shut down.
Yeah.
They want Orthodox. I'm like, how about some constructive? Why don't you come on board and help us? Why don't you come to the conference?
Yeah.
The good people did. The people who were even skeptical, they came. They saw, like, you know what? Those are lies. Like, this is not what they were saying at all. It's nothing like that. And Father Andrew even wrote an article before, and I think it was published on Orthodox Reflections. I think Orthodox Reflections published it, where he had warned these people and clerics, stop, consider us brothers, stop, help us out. And if you don't, I'll make all this stuff public. And he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes there's a response, you know what I mean, that's required. And that kicked up a hornet's nest. There are people in the clerics and the Orthodox are just like, I think they must have called us, but like, he's not going to do anything. It's like, so it's hard, you know what I mean? You have to rely on those who have acquired higher levels of virtue.
Yeah.
To, like, when to act, like, when do we do something? For the most part, like, again, pray for your enemies and just ignore it, like, and keep doing your good work.
And I'm sure the conference itself, our success story was Doctors Livingston and Carlton didn't think anybody would come. Father John and I said, y'all aren't in the orthosphere. We can guarantee at least 50 people, at least 50, and I was a little nervous about that because, yes, there are people that show support, that send me messages that, I talk to face to face or on social media, but will they have the money to come? Will they have the time off? Will they want to come and brave whatever resistance they may get from someone? And we had to turn people away. We had to
That's
turn
amazing.
people away. So that is what keeps me going. And on top of that, not just laity and not just the speakers who came, but we had clergy who attended just as attendees. Bravest people on planet Earth. Bravest people on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Those are the people who keep me going, that they don't care about the haters. They think we are doing God's work, and we are. And I could see God's hand at work in the planning of this. I think I told you this once before when we chit chatted, but I'm not one of those people who say, oh, I see God's hand at work and this, and that. I honestly don't see it because I'm so blinded by my baggage and, my lack of spiritual maturity. I don't see him but he beat me over the head with this. He's like, hello, I'm in charge. Just relax, Rebecca, And at that point, July was a really hard month. I got mentioned in 2 hit pieces. My husband's godfather called me a white nationalist, all this on social media. This was just in July. And after that, I'm just like, God's in charge of this. And I just kept going. And, that's what you do too. And just doing and not being slowed down by the devil and all these details that we feel are so huge in the moment, but they're really not. I mean, that's how we as Orthodox Christians, just as a person who's only been Orthodox for 6 years, that's how we do it in our day-to-day life. We're not popular, we're on the margins, we're already hated before wars and all that kind of thing. Christians are going to be hated, and that's nothing new. So that's what keeps me going, is the support and seeing God
My
to
main,
happen.
yeah, my probably main concern and worry this year was financial.
Mhm.
It was such a huge success last year, and we had to cut it off, like you did. There's just we didn't have fire code restrictions, so we can only have like 150, 160 in the hall. And that's not including the parishioners that come for the services and stuff like that. And so I was like, well, it's going to be even bigger next year. And I started earlier this year, and it started off really slow. I wasn't getting any numbers.
Yeah.
We started writing the people who on the mailing list and the people who attended last year. Majority of them weren't going to come back.
Oh man.
And it wasn't because of the quality of, but basically, both people's financials. It's unlike being a place that's closer to a lot of the other cities and states. It's hard. Montana's remote. Flights are expensive. And so I think people probably think of it more like a pilgrimage. So,
Yeah.
a lot of parishes each year they do a pilgrimage somewhere. Now, parishioners might choose, I could go on one of those. I could save up money and go on. Could they do it every year? Probably not.
Mhm.
And I kind of started figuring that's probably what's going on here, is that I spent a lot of money last year. I just can't afford, and I got a lot of responses. They were saying so much, like, I just can't do it this year, which is, was interesting data for me. And then there were just other things, people had moved or had jobs and stuff like that. And so I just wasn't getting the numbers. Now, the thing is, because this isn't through the church fund, this is all my funds that I have to put up. So I have to fly all the speakers out, which is really expensive. And we had 5 or 6 speakers. And the average cost of flights are, $600 to $1,200.
Wow.
And then I had to purchase all the food. I had to hire audio video. Like, there's a lot of expenses, not to include, also in, like, plates and set, all those kinds of things. Alcohol, which was a new addition this year, went really well, by the way. Had a
Good.
local,
Conviviality. This is good.
yeah, but it was like, this is all my money. I like, what happens if, like, people don't buy tickets?
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna bail me out. I'm gonna be like, oh, that deacon, man, he did some crazy awesome conferences. Well, where is he now? Well, he's living out of a garbage can now. He's
Yeah.
homeless because he exhausted all his funds. But again, this was just a demonic temptation,
Yeah.
whispering in my ear that, like, what if you, this is your money, like, that's just not right, and I was just like, what, God will take care of it. And he did. We broke even, and it was an absolute success. but that was kind of a concern for me. And in terms of kind of marketing too, and just figuring out like, what do I do in challenges like this? How do I, now the upshot of that, what was really good is we got a new and different type of crowd.
Yeah.
That was cool. You know, if I got all the same people from last time, um, you know, it would have just been this, it wouldn't have been what it was this year. So that was good, but that was probably my main hurdle and main challenge. And there was just a lot more, there were more speakers and there were a lot more. I think writing the itinerary is always difficult too, because like, first of all, people spend a lot to fly out to Montana or drive, that I'm like, I want to provide the most I can for them. So we have a professional chef that's actually a nuclear physicist as well, who has a ranch and, you know, kills all his animals and you know, cooks up the stuff. And so I had hired him, and I was like, I'm gonna make this really nice. I secured deals with the convention center to get PA mic stuff, hotel deals for people. I really wanted to make it nice, because it's strange. People sometimes they just don't know what it's like. They can't do stuff on their own. They're like, what do we do? Like, what are we gonna get? Like, so I'm like, well, okay. Maybe I'll work really hard to kind of provide. And like I said, there were that took a lot of work. And people were like, well, you've got to delegate. I'm like, I already know that. The problem is I don't trust people enough with my money to be like, well, you delegated to us and here's your $30,000, $40,000 bill.
Yeah.
I'm like, and I did delegate, you know, the women parishioners were great for helping out, and you know, a lot of kind of help and stuff like that. But most of it's always on me, because I'm like, I just don't know who else could do it.
Right.
What do they say? If you want a job done right, you do it yourself.
Do it yourself.
But you know, we're already starting to kind of mature. We're bringing in the men's group was sponsored by the men's group of the parish and stuff like that. So just like I said, it's just going to get better. But it is a lot of work. It really.
Yeah.
But the itinerary, to put all that stuff where it's like, well, I want people to be able to see tours. We had a monastery tour. I wanted to set up free time, schedule the meals and like to be able to like map that all out and be like, okay, I'm gonna have to cut this time. The speaking time should be a little bit less. I find that pretty difficult as well. I don't know. Did you have to do any of that as far as kind of writing out how much time you had and spaced it and kind of write up an itinerary? Or
Well, it was a 1 day thing. And the place we rented didn't even open till 7, and you couldn't set up the day before. So I knew that we needed a couple hours to set up and check people in and stuff, and then have coffee. And then we were going to go to vigil down the road at my home parish, which is 4 minutes down the road, and that starts at 5. So I already knew that was going on. So, but when I did the registration form, I asked people if they were coming to just vigil or vigil and liturgy the next day, so I could give my parish of usually about 72-ish people on Sundays like a heads up, we're going to need this much extra food or whatever. Parking, we have a tiny parking lot, so that was like a weird thing. I had to talk to the neighbors and put letters in their boxes, you know, their mailboxes if they weren't home. I had a friend who helped me do that, a fellow parishioner, stuff like that, you know. And so there were only so many hours we could have speakers. And then once we decided on the speakers, pitched it to them, people accepted or didn't accept, and then we filled them in. I honestly thought we would need more speakers when doctors Carlton and Livingston were like, fewer is better so we can do more Q&As. Like, I thought we needed like 10 speakers. And that was one thing. I lost that battle because I was like, y'all are crazy. We need way more speakers to fill 6 hours of time. And they're like, people like talking. Don't try to cut them off. You know, if Metropolitan Jonah comes, he's going to talk for 45 minutes, you know, that kind of thing. So they kind of, once we had the speakers, they figured out who was going to speak when. But there were a lot of moving pieces, person who could come and then couldn't come, that type of thing. um but ours was just a one day, but because it was such a success, all the other founders want to do a multiple day one next time. But there will be more people planning it next time. I mean, I'll be a part of it, but this was pretty much, I mean, not to toot my own horn, but it was a one woman show because it's near my parish. I'm the one who was like putting my name and reputation on the line with the other founders. Like, we're going to do this. And Father John, even though he had my back, I mean, he's in Spring, Texas. He couldn't really help out that much. I'm the one who's like, we need local barbecue. We need this, we need that. We need this gift bag, and we need that kind of coffee, whatever, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I did it, and it almost killed me and my family. They are saints because of dealing with me. I had a few meltdowns along the way, but I mean, looking back now, it was great fun and it couldn't have turned out any better. But we have volunteers too. So like our
Yeah.
AV people are volunteers, and everybody keeps hassling me. Where are the videos? We saw y'all recording. I'm like, they're volunteers. They have families. They're coming, y'all.
Yeah.
So it's actually, again, working out as a blessing because now people are getting so amped up. Like, if we had already released the videos, we'd be done, but we're going to like sprinkle them out, do them speaker at a time. We
Yeah,
have
we
nothing.
still have videos to be released.
Really?
Uh, well, yeah, so all the conference attendees got the videos. And
Okay.
then I sent out, and they could do whatever they want with each speaker then gets all the videos, and they can do
Mhm.
whatever they want with their own video. It's like, you want to sell your video?
Yeah,
You want to put up for free?
sure.
I only, because I pay for it, I own the exclusive rights, but I have permission to be like, for your video, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I give you the blessing. And then the Order of Saint Holy Martyr of Saint George, they did clips too for their to promote their order, that they own the exclusive rights to, but then I have their blessing to, I can upload those and also promote. So there's kind of a mutual kind of
Nice.
agreement and benefit and stuff like that. And they did a great one. I can't wait to see the other small clips. They did put some great music. And so, yeah, we still have stuff to release. I probably will put up the entire conference in a package, and sell it for like a discounted
Mhm.
price, for people that want to,
Like
basically.
beginning to end, no edits, like the whole thing.
No, the thing's edited with like
Okay,
cool,
that's neat.
like logos that pop up,
Hmm.
and because we had the raw footage,
Hmm.
and then we wanted to bring up the quality, so, and that took a little time to do the edits and put the different stuff, um and then separate. But I think, what I'll do is talking to my web manager. I'm like, let's put that up,
Yeah,
just as a package, like, and we'll have to figure out what the cost of that should be. But like, people can attend. It's like, for a small fee,
yeah,
you can watch the videos, and that'll go back into Purchase Faith Ministry in Orthodox Montana,
yeah.
um, for the future events and stuff like that, to help our ministry. Um, what was the other thing I was going to say with, oh, I was going to ask you a question. We were up so late in fellowship, so early. I mean, so early, but we had morning prayers every morning.
Hmm.
And then back to back speakers and meals and then tours and stuff like that, that I should have been exhausted. And I was running on adrenaline. I don't know if you
Oh
were,
yeah.
until it's over. As soon as like everybody's leaving, I'm like, I think I
Hmm.
need somebody to drive me home. I'm like, I don't know if I can drive back home. I'm so tired. And that, I found, was like, every year was like that. People are like, oh, you must be exhausted. I'm like, no, I'm high on endorphins and energy and coffee. And like, by the grace of God, um, the job needs to get done, and I'm not going to get tired until it's over. And then
Right.
as soon as it's over, there's a crash. It's
Oh my
just like
gosh.
I'm
Yeah.
ready to go to bed for 2 days. So I
Yeah.
was going to ask you, did you kind of have a similar experience?
Yeah, the first few nights leading up to it, like I live an hour from my church, so we got an Airbnb, my family and I, to be like 9 minutes from all the happenings. So I went out there, got some stuff done at my parish the day before, and then just couldn't go to sleep. Like my family was, one of my kids was at night school, the other two at a baseball game, this kind of thing. So I just took a long hot shower and tried to go to bed, couldn't, took some melatonin, still couldn't go to bed. So I only got like
That's where the
three.
beer. That's why I got the beer and alcohol.
Yeah.
Everybody went to bed real
Yeah,
nice.
beer and a melatonin. So I only was on about 3 hours of sleep, and with some days before that, not getting good sleep, just worrying, not worrying about like feds or Antifa or anything, just worrying like, what if the coffee maker doesn't work, or
No, yeah, that's
stupid stuff
exactly. It's the
like
days
that.
before that you start going. Now, once it
Yeah.
starts, it's really interesting the day of,
Yeah.
because there is this kind of like
Woo.
anxiety and stress level the days before. You're like, did I get everything?
Yeah.
And of course, I'd be like, oh no, I got to go get more name tags, or I almost
Yeah.
forgot this. Um,
Yeah, that's one thing I did that I don't think I've ever done before. I'm kind of flighty, and the older I get spacier and spacier. So I'm the type of person, I'll be brushing my teeth and I'll think of five things for an essay or a to do. And I'll think, oh, well, I'll go do that when I finish brushing my teeth. Well, by the time I go to do it, I'll remember one
yep,
out of the
that's
five.
me.
So I didn't do
That's so
that this time. I would stop brushing my teeth or walk with
right.
down the hallway with my toothbrush in my hand and put it on my to-do list. And that's the only way I did not forget anything. Now there were people who would remind me of things, like my friend Marge was like, "What are you doing for gift bags?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, gift
I
bags.
did.
I hadn't
I
thought of
love
that." But if I didn't put
it.
stuff down on my list, the second it came into my brain, it wasn't going to happen. So that
I
was a
did
pretty good
forget something
strategy.
this year. I'm gonna
What'd you
make a
forget?
public confession. Um, I got there and I was like, oh no, I can't believe I'd forgotten all my books
Oh
with that me
man.
and I had done that I was gonna sell. And I was like, because I live an hour away from my parish too.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm like, and I just picked up like I said, I with one of the what's great is that our capital here, the capital proper, there's like suburbs that go out, but the capital proper here is only 30,000 people.
Oh wow.
Is that crazy?
Yeah.
And so I work at the college here. I'm like the only Orthodox clergy member in Helena. So everybody knows me. And like I really like that small town. We can talk
Hmm.
about too, like um, the similarities
Yeah.
between Montana, that's a northern state, in the South. In fact, they often call Montana the South of the North. There's a lot of similarities, and even a history too, like the carpetbaggers driving out Southerners and them taking refuge in Montana. So there's a really interesting history. So life's very similar, but I like that small town.
Yeah.
I know my neighbors, and I do things for them, and they reciprocate and do things for me. And there's a kind of love and community that I really appreciate. And one of those was um, is I like being friends with the local brewers. We
That's a
have in our
good thing.
small town of 30,000, seven brewers, seven breweries.
Wow.
I know, yeah. So alcohol is really important in Montana. And so I just went to one of the brewers to get a keg to take down to of stout, of Irish stout, don't you know? Um, down to Butte for the conference, and I'm like, when I realized, I'm like, I forgot my books, and I'm like, I can't drive
Okay,
back. I can't
yeah.
drive back with
Yeah.
this. I'm setting up, and so that was the one thing that I forgot was my book that I should say our book, because we have Metropolitan Journal, we have Father Alexander Webster, and Dr. Irene and Father Peter Hears, all of us contributing to that. But I always like at the conferences to bring that and sign
Yes.
a copy. And wouldn't you know, I forgot.
Well, I will link to that in the show notes, and everybody
Okay.
listening to this must buy his book so he doesn't feel so bad about spacing on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the
Um,
endorphins, I was just going to say that day, um, I mean, running around getting things done, people volunteering to help. I mean, not just my friends, but like people who had paid to be there, like mopping and wiping off counters. And I'm like, who are you? Angels straight from heaven, that kind of thing. But I could not speak very well. I'm a much better writer than I am a speaker, even on 10 hours of sleep. But I just kept telling people 3 hours sleep. So if I sounded crazy, like I sounded like I'd been drinking wine or something, like at 10 in the morning. I was just like 3 hours sleep, but everybody gave me grace. So it was all good. They knew what I'd been going through. But yeah, it's it's like running a marathon or something. It
yeah,
was
yeah,
it felt good.
yeah. Um, I probably won't do two conferences back to back. That was a bit too much.
Yeah, tell people about that. You had Montanica in June and then you had a men's conference in August.
Yeah, so the way that that happened is
That's
that
crazy.
Metropolitan Jonah and Abbott Tree Farm were so happy with the success of last year. Um, and they really have, you know, a strong connection, especially to, I'd say myself too, to the kind of Z generation young guys and stuff like that. That's why I've worked a lot with that. But they do as well. And they were so excited. They were like, next year, let's do an all men's retreat. And I was just like, well, that's not, I was thinking in my mind, I'm like, that's not really fair. I'm like, what about all the women that want to come? And the women parishioners, they would be excluded. And like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't get myself to actually, as much as that sounded awesome, I'm like, I couldn't do it to the exclusion of the parishioners. And so that's when I came up with the idea of killing, two birds with one stone, is that we'll just do two conferences. We'll have a men's retreat. It'll be very different. And then we'll have the Orthodox Montanica. And so that's what I actually did. And the men's retreat was just, if not more, a better success than. And the men's retreat was really interesting. It actually required less planning because they're men. I'm like, you know what? They don't even need to sleep
They don't
anymore,
need a
right?
gift
They
bag.
don't even need. Yeah. All you need is beer, right?
Beer.
That's all they had to do for. I'm like, we don't even know what the topics are going to be. As long as we provide the beer and alcohol
There you
and food, men need very little, right?
go.
Um,
Simple.
uh, yeah, like because at the Montanica conference, like I had it all decorated and like uh set, you know what I mean, with what am I blanking, the centerpieces for the tables, and made it look like really nice. And that's
Wow.
what I do for women, right? I make
Yeah.
things look nice. For men, rough and tough, right?
Yeah. Vaughn was more catered to men. I had some mechanical pencils in the middle of each table. That was in case people wanted to write stuff down. I didn't even give them paper. I figured, people will probably be doing stuff on their phone anyway. But I did throw out a few mechanical pencils. It did help that the place we rented, they were like nothing on the walls. They were like it was a great place. It was next to nothing. It was the community center in Tobaccoville where my parish is, but it was bare bones. So, and we had to clean up in an hour too. So I'm like, I can't have stuff all over the place. But yeah, mechanical pencils was my decor.
That's
Oh, and the
funny.
flags, the triggering flags that were on the sign-in table.
Yeah. Um, well, I knew that was going to happen, right? I'm like, Southern's going to fly
Yeah.
their flags, and then people are going to get
Yeah.
upset.
Well, we exist. That kind of triggers people, but we ain't going
Yeah.
anywhere.
Um,
Well, tell me a little bit about like the localist angle of Montanica and community and building connections. Hyphen Girl would call that the spirit of radicalism, but this is like people you meet online, and then you want to bring them out for in real life for in real life
Yeah.
dialogue and talking. And like the Q&As, the other founders aren't sure if they want to release the Q&As to everybody, but to me, the first thing I said after the conference was over, I was like, let's just do 6 hours of Q&As next year. They were so riveting. There was just enough like rhetorical sparring and differences between the speakers because we're not all carbon copies of each other. It was
Yeah.
fascinating. But tell me about these connections and why you think it's important in the localist aspect of it too.
Yeah. And so one thing I count myself really blessed is just the clergy here in Montana. We're far from each other.
Yeah.
I'm an hour from Butte where I serve. And I serve at a newly formed mission parish under Bishop Maxime in the next county over, about 15 minutes south of here. And there is Billings, which is like probably 3.5 hours. There's Bozeman, which is about 2 hours. There is Missoula, which is about 2 hours and 20 minutes. And there is Kalispell, which is 3 hours and 15 minutes. So that's a pretty big space sprawled out. Yet most of us clergy, there's a handful of clergy that are involved with this, that we're all so different and each has their talents. And I'm just so blessed to work with them. And Montana is very missions minded. And so whatever my talents are, obviously I do work on social media that the other clergy don't. But then they have, obvious talents that I don't have. And so it's really cool to see us all kind of come together, and it's coalesced. Not only are all of those clergy involved in Montana, some of the clergy on the Patristic of Faith Advisory Board, they're active parts in the Orthodox Montana. So my purpose has always, let me rewind. Father Russell, who I just noticed sent me a text asking me, this is really funny. Speaking of, out of all the times when I could get a text from Father Russell, do you have copies of last year's talks? Email if you do, from the conference. How weird is that?
That's weird.
We're having this conversation. Obviously Father is planning something or thinking about something.
Nice.
But priests across the country use Father Russell Radojich's, who's now an archpriest, Stabafor, Father Russell, because he was awarded the elevation and the jeweled cross. They use his missions model. He has a model. He spent time in business and working, before he was clergy. And he's also an eniologist, one who went to school to study wine, which is really interesting too. And, there's something communal about wine too. And all this stuff is kind of coalesced to like make Father Russell who he is. And he's kept orthodoxy alive in Montana. When there were no priests here, he would drive, in 4 feet of snow, minus 20, 30 degree weather where he could die, and to serve communion and to visit the sick, 3-4 hours away. And he kept it all together here. And the hub of Orthodoxy in Montana is his parish, because that's where Orthodoxy came in through St. Sebastian of Jackson, Dobrovic, consecrated by St. Tikhon, the Enlightener of America. It's 123 years old. And wow. So really all of Orthodoxy has gone out of there, and it still stays connected to that center in a lot of senses. And so Father Russell's all about community. We're Holy Trinity, which is a community. God is a community, and it's incarnational. So Father Russell knows the dangers of technology and mobile devices, cell phones and stuff like that. In the hall, you can't bring out your, like for coffee hour and stuff like that. It has signs that put away your cell phone and be attentive to your, right? So he really understands community. He knows how to build community. And then here I have this other aspect too. Well, I'm in online communities. That's a virtual world, and we can appropriate that and do good. But I want to bring people into, I want to use that to bring people into a Trinitarian incarnational community of a face-to-face encounter with the parish, the priest, your parishioners, and stuff like that. Father Panayotos in Kalispell, he was a therapist. He's good at community. He has his own thing that he does. Father Andrew Moore has built a mission. He's an archpriest. So everybody's talents kind of come together, and I just can't. It's hard for me to see. I was in Southern California before I moved up here about 3.5 years ago. There's parishes all over. We're next to Los Angeles. There's so many people, but yet in city life, we're so disconnected. Mm-hmm. There wasn't that. Occasionally there was a it might be a pan-Orthodox Vespers. I really worked hard working with Young Adults League and the Serbian. I think they did something called Form at the Cathedral. But it was really hard. The environment made it very difficult, even though there's so much there. Montana presents kind of, because of the expanse of land and the way that communities just kind of naturally form here, is kind of stronger bonds. It's just ripe for Orthodox growth. And the distances actually bring us together. It means something. As Father Russell says, sometimes I have to drive and I'm worried about the roads getting down. People die in fact, I have a little kind of contest I play with a friend. This game, he went to undergraduate with me, and he is Orthodox. He married a Russian girl and lives in Siberia in the Yakutsk region. So we play this game of who has the colder weather going to church. And I won this year. I got minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And I was realizing that now in Montana, as soon as you leave the city, you have no cell phone reception. And so if my car were to break down, and it could,
yeah,
especially at minus 40, because I could hear the car was like, zzz, and I'm like, those weird noises, and it's a brand new car, and I'm like, wow, if I break down, I've got probably a good 10-15 minutes before I'm dead.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but you know what, that makes going to church mean something, right? If I die, you could all say, well, you died doing what he loved.
That's
he
right.
was on the way to he froze to death. And you could have this wonderful kind of mythology and story that develops. But it's really true. The distances, the fact that it's harsh, it builds character. It builds, forces us to come together as a community. And I really like that. And it's still the Wild West out here. Mm-hmm. Like, modernity hasn't, broken in too much. The modern lifestyles, and certainly city life, our largest city is probably Billings, and I think that's 250,000. So we know that we want people to experience that. What's going on, and there really is a grace and something happening. The kingdom of God is present through his grace among the priests here in Montana, and whatever he's doing with this sinner deacon, despite my flaws and sins, he's able to use me and work with the other priests. And it's a miracle. I mean, we have a monastery that's 1,000 acres that is being built and it's being built by the children. In one sense, basically, there's I almost said work camp. We have work camps up here, and we'll strike that and avoid that. That's the last thing I need.
Little child labor.
Little child labor. We're back on the way back old times, before child labor laws in Montana. But they're camps in which the kids come to the monastery from all over different states, and they fellowship and they worship, and then they work, and they pick all the rocks individually, and those rocks go into building the monastic cells.
Wow.
Their hands, the child's hands, you must become like a child to enter the kingdom. They are building the kingdom in a monastery and on 1,000 acres, and it's open for the taking. It's not under any jurisdiction. If abbot and his monks wanted to come there, they could actually take that. And that's just one opportunity. There's other people that have properties and homesteads throughout Montana that are building chapels, planning for women's monasteries and different stuff like that. So we're really excited, and we want people to come up in. There's no way to explain it. Father Turbo, when he came up, and him and I were walking through the monasteries and talking, and he's like, Father Deacon, I don't want to. He's like, how do I put this? He's like, I don't want to say that I didn't believe you, but I kind of like didn't believe you, everything that you were saying about like what it was like up here and what's happening. He's like, I know you're a philosopher and you're good at these words. He's like, maybe I thought you were hyping it up. He's like, there are no words to describe. It's like the closest thing to heaven on it. And I'm like, I know. I'm like, you've got to come and experience. And people can be a part of that. Somebody asked, are you trying to get people to move up here? And I'm like, well, it's not a primary intention, but obviously, if you have good Orthodox people, don't you want them around you?
Yeah.
Don't you want them to be part of like a good project? It's like, if you want to, we'd be happy to put you to work and be part of the community. If not, take these ideas and plant them in your own state, in your own city. Take this template, which is what Father Russell already started with how he develops missions. People liked it so much that the priests took that, and they're planting missions in Texas and Arizona, and all these different states based on his model. So Orthodox Montanica, we really can't put it in words. You have to come and experience, come taste and see that the Lord is good. And then it's going to change you, because you're going to experience something not made by the hands of men, that's beyond words, that's truly apophatic, that truly is the kingdom that can only be accessed through the incarnational experience of that presence of community. And then it will change. And, is Saint Irenaeus had said, Logos spermaticus, seeds of the word are planted in those who experience, and then they go out and they grow Orthodoxy in other places too. So that's really kind of what Orthodox Montanica is all about. And I think you could speak to that too.
Yeah, that last sentence, we want people to like enculturate Orthodoxy into where they are now. Now, of course, if people wanted to do something like you're doing, my parish is in Tennesseeville, North Carolina. We have people that live all over. One couple drives 2.5 hours to get there. So, we would love it if at some point in time we could all, walk to church together, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
But the whole, it being a template for spreading Orthodoxy and doing it in various parts of the South, in cities and countrysides or whatever. But I've had some people early on, well, why can't we have a, Northeast fellowship? I'm like, well, you can do that. What about a Pacific Northwest thing? Well, yep, you can do that, but that's not where I live, So it's this template of the seeds, like you said, the seeds of the word that are planted. And fortifying orthodoxy for people who are already in the South and are Orthodox, but of course,
I got the same
spreading
question, by the
orthodoxy.
way.
Yeah.
Somebody says, why come Montana? I'm
Yeah.
like, because I live here.
Right.
Like
But
fly out to your, I mean, maybe like you
yeah,
want to pay me to like build conferences and do stuff. Like
right.
I'd probably do that. But like, this is where I live. This is my community.
And it's
So you
natural.
obviously got this. Yeah, you got the same. I'm like, you start with those that are closest to you
Yes.
and then you work out. Now, notice that secular life has it inverted. We've got to send money to Darfur and
Yeah.
free Tibet and stuff while or the Ukraine
Mhm.
while we have our neighbor is starving, while our neighbor, and I had a professor, don't judge him or me because he was a Jesuit, but he was a good Jesuit as far as Jesuits go. And he was a professor of mine in Ireland, Brendan Purcell, and he was telling a story about he was going through ethics or something like that, and talking about acquiring virtue or something. Students got all inspired. That's what I want. I want to become a better person. He's like, what should I do? Because it does require doing to become better. Should I give my money to Darfur? Should I sign up for UNICEF? Give my money to UNICEF? These are all kind of typical European kind of charity organizations and ideas. And he says, do you have, he says, James said, do you have any brothers or sisters there? And he says, yes, I do. He says, love them. And he was shocked. And he says, I can't. It's often those closest to us. And the hardest work starts here.
Absolutely.
And everybody wants to flee. This is the problem too. Everybody wants to go to these, like, I want to just go to the monastery and go to Mount Athos and do all this stuff. Like, what are you doing at home?
Yep.
I mean, even the simple things. Do you volunteer for coffee hour? Are you in the choir? Like, do you help clean up? Well, that's too hard. You know what's easier? Sending money to people that you don't even
Right.
know. But they're
Yeah.
not your neighbors. Your neighbor is the one closest to you that's often the hardest to. And so we begin here and we spread outwards. That's the world inverts it. Anyways.
Yeah. I mean, it's just parish life, and that's one of the things that the haters talk about. They go after converts when we want to convert people, right? Well, my theory is they don't like the converts because we're the ones that have seen, what happened to Protestantism or Catholicism, or have lived with occultism or atheism, feminism, whatever, any of those crazy isms. But also we are we're wanting to convert people. I said it at the end of the conference. I was just thanking people, and I said, it's no secret, I want everybody to be Orthodox. I mean, this is a good thing, but that happens in parish life and then emanates out from there. Well, it happens in our own homes, and then it emanates to parish life and out from there. But that's one of the things the haters say, that they must not really go to a church because they're always online and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, you know, that is not any of the Orthodox I know. I mean, geez Louise, parish council and choir and all these sisterhood and all these things, and that's where it really, really happens. But that's what we want for people. So we want the South, right, to be baptized into Orthodoxy, but we want you to have a good parish with a good shepherd who will protect the flock, because the slings and arrows aren't just coming from the haters. I mean, they're just coming at everybody all the time. I mean, Jordanville just had a bomb threat today. I mean, things are going to get rough. So you have this parish life, and even if you have to drive an hour to get there or through the snow, this is your safe space, not just because of your friends and your fellow parishioners, but God is there. So this is what we want for everybody, and I want that for the people of the South, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's beautiful. And you want that for the people of Montana, or for people to move there to Montana from wherever they are. And it's just a beautiful, I mean, what could be any more beautiful and true and good than that?
Yeah. And I know, the parallels between the South and Montana too is that uh, Montanans have a real connection to the land.
Yep.
Um, and I brought this up with Dr. Philip Mamalakis because he brought up environmentalism. He was like, "What doesn't have to be a left or right?" And often the right things put in the wrong paradigms become broken and wrong. Like just the very idea of like what love is in the wrong religion or paradigm, it's incorrect. Obviously, as Orthodox, we transcend politics and left and right paradigms, and we have the correct understanding of the environment. And I saw that there's something very Orthodox environmentalism of Montana. And it was interesting because why? We're not removed from the land. We live with the animals, right? We live with the community. We're in danger. When I'm out hiking and there's more grizzlies where I fish and hike, anywhere in the United States apart from Alaska and Yellowstone. We had a California lady got a guy just got attacked. Two guys just attacked and down by Bozeman. But it connects you to the land. And so you have an appreciation and a healthy stewardship of. Now, Dr. Philip Mamalak says, but that's ironic saying that you're saying this while one of the greatest environmental disasters was right behind you. It's known as the Berkeley Pit in Butte. And I didn't think about saying this at the time, but until I left, and I was like, you know what? Outside money. It's not the money that came in and built that is not Montana money.
Yep.
In fact, Montana has a law. It's a great law. It's illegal to receive for political campaigns any outside money outside of Montana.
That's great.
And we need more. Keep Montana, Montana.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have bumper stickers. Don't California my Montana.
Yeah.
And these sorts of things. And so, but that connection to the land and the stewardship of the Eucharistic, that we work the land and we give back, that is the correct kind of environmentalism. And so I think the very geography and the people that were raised and brought up here it's Orthodox, like it's the perfect place for, and I know the South has that connection to the land and the people too, that's very similar too. It's like these are great places to be baptized Orthodox because they're already halfway there.
Right. Well, when you start talking about agrarianism, people are like, "Oh, you want to bring back slavery?" And it's so ridiculous. No, it's the agrarian.
Just child slavery and child labor. That's all I was.
I mean, that's one of the things that I've written about before, but I just stole this idea from the fugitives, the Southern agrarians that wrote it. Vanderbilt back in the 1920s and 30s wrote, "I'll take my stand." One of the things is, when you are tied to the land, you can't ignore God. It's going to be dark outside. You can't put a spotlight over your 50 acres, right? When it rains, you may want it to be dry, et cetera, et cetera. Seasons happen. But in a factory that is man-controlled, you can have the lights on all the time. You can have busy worker bees doing their industrial capitalist dance for your factory all day long, whereas an agrarian-based society, you can't ignore God because of nature, So it's one of those things that is this Orthodox ethos. And you want to be a good steward if you're growing things and you have animals there and you're selling the products and eating the meat and all these types of things. So I mean, I'm sure there may even be more farmers. I'd like to know the like real farmers, not like corporate farmers, versus like North Carolina where I live versus Montana. Montana might have more per capita because there's a lot of people here
we have a
who farm
lot
anymore.
I don't even know if there is any big factory farming. There's misconceptions about what that is anyways. But all I see is local farms.
Yeah, that's great.
In fact, like I just bought this huge stand-up freezer. And we get all our local sort of grass-fed, grass-finished beef, pork, eggs from a local. It's called Double X Bar, and then there's also what is it? Salt. Oh, Mannix beef is another. We have tons of local farmers, and then what's really nice about that, the money's put back into our own economy.
Yeah.
Which is really good. So we like to help out, and that's really kind of a Montana thing too, as well, is reinvest back into Montana, help your neighbors.
Yep.
The other thing I was thinking that's good too about the agrarian lifestyle, and we do see that there are problems online, us clergy, with the youth, especially the Z generation. And I'm Generation X, and so I transcend all problems of generations as being a Generation X. That's what we're known for. The one that does, no, I'm kidding. But we didn't get internet kind of introduced until way late.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a Gen Xer too. Yeah.
Yeah, video games didn't come in, and they weren't kind of all pervasive until I was like in 5th or 6th grade. No cell phones. We had beepers, and you had to go on the TVs. You actually had to flip through in the radio. I was just talking to somebody. I'm like, I mean, the big deal, if you remember when the Discman came out, Sony Discman, like CDs and stuff like that. And I was just thinking, I'm like, nobody even has CDs anymore.
Right.
It's like digital. And the thing is the Z generation doesn't know that. They're born into the digital social media hyper, right? And they're constantly plugged in. The virtual world has become the real world for them, and the real world has become the virtual. It's been all inverted, and there's a lot of problems that occur for that. And one of those is relationship problems. Young people can't date. They can't find the right person. Why? Because they spend all their time in a virtual world, and not. They're addicted to pornography. That's the other thing too. Like when we were young, I mean, you really would have. It's like seeking out hardcore drugs or something.
Right.
You'd have to find somebody who was like really dodgy. That's like, yeah, I got a cousin and he sells,
right,
dope, right? And so it spared us from a lot of stuff. You'd have to, like with pornography, basically find the creeper dad who had like Playboy magazines, and so we were spared. It's like it's just too much work. Now being
was a hassle.
Yeah, it's like too much of a hassle to do sin. Now it's too easy. It's just you're constantly plugged into, and they're addicted. So that destroys relationships too. Now these young kids, boys, especially boys, they don't know what it means to be a man. They don't have a good father figure. And one thing that I think that nature and the agrarian kind of community can help is men need to work. None of these people know how to work. Let me give you a perfect example. A couple of Sundays ago, I was driving to church with a young Zoomer. He was driving me. And he'd stayed the night up here in Helena because he had a flat tire, and he had to get the tire repaired. So we're driving back down to Butte the next morning for liturgy, and I heard this thump, and I was like, oh, what was that? There's definitely nothing in the road, because I'm looking at the road and you didn't run over. I'm like, how well did those guys patch your tire? Because like I said, we're going in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Like you break down. And so I said, do you have any like sensors, air sensors? He's like, yeah, well, that broke on my car. So I don't know what my tire pressure. He's like, but I do have a light if it goes flat that'll come on. I'm like, okay, we'll just keep an eye on it. It goes flat. It goes flat halfway between, my place and church. And we pull over. I'm like, well, I'm gonna get my cassock dirty. I might be a little bit late to church, but like I said, it's an event, like it means something.
Yeah.
So he has no idea, he's never changed a tire in his life. And didn't even know where the spare tire was. And we go looking through, and he's like, I guess I don't have a spare tire. I was like, thank God it's not winter, because we'd be dead. Like, you got to get a spare tire. And eventually we made it and stuff. It was this big adventure, but I was just thinking about that. Here's somebody that's never even, like, that. Something I just take for granted. Changing tires.
Yeah.
Working on a car, like fixing something. And I'm like, these kids need to work, and they would learn virtue and what it is to be a man. And then they'd have something to offer the woman, right?
Right.
I'm a man. Like, I know how to do things, right? So that's just another advantage, I think, of a potential solution. And whatever the haters have the problems with the youth, we're trying to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a program for that. A very natural program, Orthodox program. And, they feel like outcasts. They're the outsiders. They're the ones nobody wants.
The forgotten, the identitylessness, that I talk about that a lot. The atomization, it's all purposeful. And then when you point it out, like, you're the weirdo. One of the things that Religious News Service article talked about was, again, no poll was done, but it said many of the conference attendees and speakers call themselves traditionalists. Oh, shocking. Advocating for young marriages, homeschooling, and trade schools over universities. Like, to us, yes, this is common sense. And we're like, yeah, we don't deny that. But to the haters, that's bizarre, and it's, again, we were having this conversation the other day, like the normies, the people who aren't like hardcore, I have to call them something, left wingers. Yeah, I call them lefty docs, but something, the people who are the haters, the non-traditionalists, the heterodox people, they, they're going to hate these things and we're going to love these things. But the people in the middle, if they think that's a radical, extreme, racist thing, if you don't get that by that point, I'm just kind of like, if you don't get it by now, that this is all good stuff that we're talking about, and what they push is bad and heterodox, I don't understand. So, not to bring it back to the haters again, but everything you just said makes sense to sane people, but it's used against us to, try to tar us as evil people. And one of the things Hyphen Girl said, by the way, I did coin that. That is my one claim to fame. At my
That's
funeral,
awesome.
That will, y'all can say, yeah,
That'd
she's the
be
gal who coined that.
known for the creation of
But it has to be with 3 R's because she's growling. But anyway, they think we are building an American Orthodoxy. Now, she was talking about the fellowship, but this would be for you too. No, we're not. We're creating an American Orthodoxy that's not in line with the gospel, but rather with right-wing extremism. So all those things you just said, speaking to men, young men who are left behind, who are blamed for everything. I have 3 teenage sons. They're just the cause of everything horrible. Wanting them to be Orthodox and to share the gospel with them, that's right-wing extremism. I mean, think about that. It is so anti-human. It enrages me that clergy go along with some of this stuff. I mean, it is not just not Orthodox. It is a dehumanizing thing. So speak more about like your men's conference, and we'll have to start wrapping it up here. I think we're pushing 2 hours, but why you think the men's conference was so important, and then you're thinking about having a women's conference too. Tell me what some of the thinking is about that.
Yeah, I mean, you can label us um, with anything you want. But it's just like you said, it's just orthodoxy. Orthodoxy transcends politics. Um, and so what these people really want is they don't like orthodoxy. They want to make it something different.
Yeah.
So I don't
Pretty
need to do
obvious.
anything. And the thing is that again, I've talked about this when I teach political philosophy, and you have here. So just so you know that I do read my Marx and Engels.
Excellent.
I know all the material, right? Like I'm qualified in, but there's something about modernity. It's unnatural. It breaks from the natural order, God's order, and it attempts to be God. It's what I identify as a Gnostic or a neo-Gnostic movement. The creation's bad and the creator's bad, and I can do a better job. And I will construct and system build. This is what bureaucracy is. I will change the order of being.
Right.
And you make yourself God. So the world centrally plans, right? If you look at modern political movements, we can solve all economic, social ills, race relations by systemizing and planning. We can solve all education problems. Everything can be solved by education and system building and stuff like that. But we Orthodox are the opposite of that. It's organic.
Yep.
And so I don't need to change anything.
Amen.
I just keep the things that were taught and passed down.
Yeah.
And for them, it's like, well, that's right wing. You mix. It's like, no, like, it's not right. Like, it's neither right or left. Those are modern kind of conceptions. And so those are just weaponized words. And so what I realized is I don't have to systematize and plan. I don't have to change orthodoxy. I don't have to bring my ideas in. All I have to do is bring people together.
Yep.
In a Trinitarian incarnational way. All I have to do is assemble wise, virtuous clergy members to guide, to provide counsel. All I have to do is what's always been done. And God, that's where the Holy Spirit is, and God provides. So, I know it's tempting as an academic. You see a problem, and then I'm going to go alone in my office and room and like have to think of some type of philosophical solution and plan out this whole thing and write. But Orthodox is not like that. That's not a life, right? That's a system. It's a philosophy. I know it very well. I'm an academic. I'm a professor. But that's not what we do in Orthodoxy. What we do is we bring people together. So he says, it seemed good to us in the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit leads. And there's a humility that's in that. So if you notice all the haters, right, they're the system builders. There's no humility in that. Everybody else has got, and it's the hallmark of a heretic. Everybody else has got it wrong. I'm the first person to get it right, and I'm going to change it. And then they'll make an icon of me that I fixed all the problems. I identify that, and I'm like, well, I want to be the opposite.
Yeah.
Whatever that is,
I'm
going to do the opposite. If these people hate, I'm going to love. If they try to system build and use pride, I'm going to humble myself, right? And I'm going to be open. I'm going to be open to criticism. And that's a good path. That's kind of what we've done. And then we invite people all to come, right? There's no exclusion, like you said. And they can experience the healing, right? Through these wonderful speakers and the wonderful community and friendships that are kind of built. And it's healing young men. It healed. We all walked away in tears. Like, I cannot believe what happened. And we're pleasantly surprised because we didn't build it. Again, it's the kingdom not built by the hands of men. All we are is co-workers, right? We didn't build the system. We're just keeping what was handed down, what was taught to us. Some people don't want that. They want something very different. And they don't like the young people because I was talking to my class today. I said, you guys are, your generation is in a privileged position. The boomer generation is probably the most easily propagandized. They pretty much believe everything that's put on the TV. You've seen the failures of the various generations. You stand kind of apart. And then they have their own vices, of course, but they're able to see the failures. It's like a younger sibling, right?
Yeah.
My younger brother didn't make the same mistakes because he saw what happened to me. They're like that as well. They're able to see the cracks in the matrix, the system that was built, that it's a facade. And they don't want a part of it. And they're outspoken about it. Now, we were going over Noam Chomsky in class today. He was doing an institution analysis of the propaganda machine through media, through bankers. It's really good, actually, and his manufacturing consent. And he's like, any system needs to run well. Okay. And so it naturally builds within its system ways of expelling things that would interrupt that system. So you don't want the system to collapse.
Hey, that's me and
first,
you. They're
the
expelling
first
us.
one we saw, the first one we saw was Socrates. The elites in the system, he did not work well, and they had built in there a mechanism for dealing with that, and he died. They killed him. And so I think, especially as academics, we're part of that. Noam Chomsky talks about that. There's two classes for propaganda. About 20%, which are typically managers, academics, professors. He says they're the most important to be propagandized. They really have to be propagandized in a deep way.
Yeah.
And the rest don't know, and unfortunately, the 80% receive the worst of it. But notice with the academic, the more that I participate in the system of propaganda and the facade, I'm elevated. I'll get tenure. If I do the journalism the way that I'm supposed to. And by the way, where am I educated? In the system, right? That propagandized me. I think the youth, the Z generation, sees that. They're like, this is a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
And they're willing to call it out. But if you're an institutionalist, if you're an academic, if you're a journalist, right, that has a very different and a secular mindset that's different than orthodoxy, these people are problems.
And anthropologists, let's not forget them.
Yeah,
that's what Sarah is.
But they're problems. Do you see? They don't work well. They will collapse the system.
Yeah.
They'll expose the con.
Yeah.
For what it is, and we can't have that. And so they become enemies, and there's ways of dealing with them. And I think that's kind of what's really going on.
Yeah, I talk about my kids a lot being skeptical and having a really good BS detector. And I think exactly what you said is on point. This younger generation, they don't believe anything, I mean, my kids, they're Orthodox, they do, but those are the people that can be reached with truth, because they are, oh man, just because I saw that, I don't believe it. I mean, that's actually a really good way to come at this crazy fake world we live in, but they need obviously the guidance of the church and good clergy and a strong parish and things like that. Because I mean, I think having a really good BS detector is an asset. And yeah, some generations don't have it. Some people just don't have it. I mean, my husband and I were talking about that the other day. We're like, we're not that special. We're not that smart. Like, how come we can see these subtexts so much easier than everybody else? And
it doesn't necessarily have to do with intelligence.
Yeah.
It has to do with character traits and virtues
that
you've been blessed with. It could have, I mean, it's multifaceted. There could
and
be many,
mistakes made.
yeah,
Yeah, I think
maybe
my
money reasons. Yeah.
yeah, my history as a feminist who minored in women's studies and went to UW Madison and being a hippie and all that kind of stuff, like I lived in it. So now when I see people trying to sell that to me, I can kind of like
Yeah.
speak that language. I know the con.
Yeah. It's a total con. Yeah. If you've been in the cult, you know the con of the
Yeah,
cult.
right.
Excuse me.
Like a
Yeah.
whistleblower. Well, let's pivot real quick to I'm really glad you had a men's conference because we've already talked about how men are often forgotten, young men, especially traditionalists, if they're not going along and being a soy boy or whatever. But a women's conference. So that triggers me. The first thing when I hear a women's conference, I think it's gonna be horrible. Not because of you, because I just think of like, just in general, coming from like the Protestant world, even when I was
It's going to be a
Protestant.
unique challenge. I'm going to have to
Yeah,
think
you're
about.
gonna have to work really hard not to make it not lame, but you know, we live in such a feminized society. I know you're gonna do a great job, but just it's like this inertia of just everything feminist. I'm not saying you're going to do that, but I want to come out there and see it so you can blow my mind and you can be like, this is the best
Now, I
women's
actually did a
conference
women's
ever.
event
You did?
at the conference
Okay.
for the first time. I set aside a particular time where all the women separated from the men and they
Okay.
went out to dinner and fellowship together. I'm like, you can
Nice.
let your guards down. I'm like, nobody's going to be there. Um, and maybe it's just something like that where it's just organically,
Yeah.
I just set it up and, it just plays out.
Yes. Do that, because the women's conferences that are secular or Protestant or whatever, they're not organic, and they have very much a narrative they want to push. So yeah, just let these traditionalists, Orthodox women, or inquirers, or whoever happens to be there, just hang out and talk. Organic
Bringing in
is
good speakers.
yeah.
That's the main part.
Yeah.
I'd like to reach out to Abbess Emiliani, who's in Maryland, Union Bridge, Maryland, at St. Nina's Monastery. And, you know, especially, maybe even some matushkas, clergy, priest wives that I almost like. I have so many in mind that I could. So the hard part is kind of narrowing it down.
Yeah.
Um, I really just kind of like what I would do is probably get a theme.
Yeah.
A lot of that comes from feedback and just kind of taking polls and stuff like that. What are some of the things that you're concerned with in life? What are your
Mhm.
interests, right? Once I get, and that's me again, instead of system building, what am I doing?
Mhm.
I'm listening.
Yeah.
I'm a therapist, right? As clergy. What do you want? What do you need? What are some of your struggles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all I have to do is look to orthodoxy. There's the solutions. I don't have to create anything. I don't have to be a novel academic or anything like that. I just have to look at what's always been done.
Right.
And so if I did a women's retreat, it would probably be something like that.
Well, awesome. And is that supposed to be for next summer? And you'll do
I have no
Montanica
idea.
and then okay. Just
I got
getting
to
the
run it by
ideas.
Bishop, His Grace Bishop Maxim too.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I don't know if I could do two in the summer.
Yeah.
But then again, it's so hard because I
The
don't think most people
calendars.
can like come out here
Yeah.
in winter.
Yeah.
Winter's my favorite time out here. Like I'm
Yeah.
so excited. It's fall now, and I just we even got some first snow. I can't believe it. On
Oh,
some
I'm
of the
so
mountains,
jealous. I love snow.
and I'm just like, oh, I gotta get skiing. Now the downside of that is um fishing. Like I guess ice fishing comes up, but I'm thinking that too. I'm like, I got to get back out on the river and start catching some more fish. Um, anyways, but I wish it was more kind of. I wish I could bring people in the winter, but Father Russell and the clergy were like, I don't think it's going to work. So I'm just going to have to keep brainstorming, but just know that it's in the workings, and I'm
Yep.
thinking about and talking with the other clergy, and I'll speak to His Grace about his thoughts too.
And this is something that we both have to deal with having planned conferences is you don't want it to be um a hardcore fasting time.
Yeah.
But it's pan-orthodox, so you have two different calendars to deal with, so there's only a handful of times to actually do it throughout the year, which is why
Yep.
Father John Whiteford looked at a calendar back in, I don't know, March or something when we were thinking about doing it, and he's like, well, we can do June or September. And I wasn't even thinking about Montana. I was just thinking June's too soon. And then so we're like,
Yeah.
okay, it was September by default. So that's another thing too. It's really hard to
September would be a good month.
yeah.
The
Just
other thing too is
don't
that I've
steal our
talked
spot.
about. No,
Don't
I
steal our
won't.
spot. Okay.
The other thing too that I've thought about doing too is expanding and if I can make it financially worth my while, because I have to stop doing work, right? And I'm
Mhm.
not getting paid. But if I could financially, I wouldn't mind actually going to other cities and parishes and putting on a conference
Yeah.
sponsored by Patristic Faith. We've talked about that. And that might be a possible. We would always have Orthodox Montanica, but what if it developed and grew?
Hmm.
And it's like, I'll come to your parish and I'll put this together for you.
Yeah.
And it is a lot of work. And so, like, you have to pay somebody to do that.
I mean, event planners having planned an event, I know why they get paid a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Anyways, that's just lots of great plans,
That's
and
awesome.
but first things first, yeah, it'll be the Orthodox Montanica.
Excellent.
Is we're already planning it right now. I was talking with His Grace Bishop Maxim about potential speakers. I can't announce it until I actually get
Mhm.
them,
Oh yeah.
um, because I don't want to get people's hopes up and then be like, oh, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And the other, talking with the other clergy as well. But I do know the theme.
What is it?
The theme has been chosen: marriage and family.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, yeah, I think I was poking around the website and saw it. Well, that is wonderful, and then that would be a good, obviously, spin-off if you did the women's conference after that. That's awesome. Well, you know what? I'm glad the same haters that hate me hate you, because
Oh,
because
yeah.
that means I must be doing something right. And these people want to be gatekeepers, but this horse ain't going back in the gate. If that is the saying, the train ain't going back in the station, right?
Good.
Montanica is going down the road. So are we. The momentum is going. There's no stopping it. And that makes some people mad, and that's their problem. But it
As
makes
I always
us
say, your
happy.
hate makes me stronger.
Right. So it's true, but I am just happy that it has been such a success, and I do hope to get out there sometime. I've never
Yeah.
been to Montana at all.
Oh,
I went to school in Wisconsin and traveled around the Midwest a little bit, been to the Northwest a little bit, but that whole part of the U.S. I've never been there, and I would love to just see it. Yeah,
it's huge and beautiful and wild. It's
excellent. I
Well,
like
thank you
wild.
so much, Rebecca, for having me. And
Yes,
God bless the work of your hands and your family and your community and your priests and everything that's happening down there. And, God bless our enemies and haters. And God is good. He's a good God who loves mankind. And we have hope. And thank God we have God on our side and
yes,
good people, good
yes.
Christian. Yeah.
Absolutely. This is the good work to be doing. So thank you, Father Deacon. God bless you all out there in Montana, and I hope to meet you IRL sometime. That would be wonderful.
Awesome.
You have a good night.
Okay. God bless.
Thank you. Bye bye.